Hello, and welcome to this webinar from Five9 Software. In this session, we're going to take a look at Hyper-V security tips and give you best practices around how to protect yourself from vulnerabilities that you never knew existed. I'm Symon Perriman, VP of Business Development at Five9, and I'm joined by Alex Karavanov, our Director of Sales Engineering. Over the course of this 1 hour, we're going to give you kind of an introduction to talk about how security in a virtualized environment is different. We're then going to take you through 4 best practices where we're going to take a look at firewalls, AV and anti-malware, intrusion detection, as well as management. This way, you'll get a broad view of all these different types of considerations that you need in your own data center. Let's quickly do a couple of introductions. I'm Symon Perriman, VP of Business Development and Marketing. I moved over to Five9 about 3 months ago because I was extremely excited about this new set of technologies that they're building. Really the only security solutions for Hyper-V that are designed for Hyper-V. Previously, I spent 8 years at Microsoft as an engineer, as well as the senior technical evangelist covering all of our virtualization technologies. I'll also briefly introduce Alex, who's going to be helping me with the demos. Alex has been at Five9 for several years and directs our sales engineering team. With over 10 years of experience in the field, he's been a great resource for Five9 and all of our customers looking to deploy Hyper-V, as well as adopt our different security solutions. And if you have any questions during this event, please feel free to ask them using the interactive poll or send one of us an email directly, and we'd be more than happy to respond. Now, we were founded in 2009 and are based in Chicago with offices worldwide. We have offices throughout Europe and also throughout our different cities in North America. I'm actually based out in Seattle, so we do have a global customer base. We actually have 3 products. They're all designed for Hyper-V. We have our security product, which we're going to talk a little bit about today, showing you how it helps enable these best practices. And then we also have a management product and a V2V converter product. And these have been really designed and optimized for former VMware admins, helping them migrate from VMware over to Hyper-V, and then get a management experience which is very consistent with vCenter. You know, we hear a lot of Hyper-V customers get frustrated with the number of different interfaces that they need to use to manage their virtualized environment, whether that's PowerShell, Hyper-V Manager, Failover Cluster Manager, or System Center. So we created a low-cost, unified platform that has many of the features of System Center, but at a fraction of the cost. So if you're interested in other Hyper-V management tools, we definitely want to encourage you to check out these solutions. Now, I'm going to go over a couple of security design best practices for a virtualized environment. And of course, these are broadly applicable for any Hyper-V or any virtualized environment as well. Now, the first consideration, and this is very important, you have to realize that traditional security no longer really works in a virtualized environment. And what we mean by traditional security is endpoint security, where you actually have to go and protect and guard every single virtual machine. Now, this becomes impractical when you start to scale up. In a traditional data center, where you maybe had 10 servers, a storage array, and some network equipment, that wasn't changing very often, much easier to secure. But you need to really think about a different model here. The other thing you want to think about is the performance overhead of actually protecting every virtual machine. Now, if you think about the biggest best practice of virtualization, it's increasing density on a particular host so that you can get more out of every single server. Now, that usually means that most people in a virtualized environment have servers that are running at 70%, 90%, sometimes even close to 100%. So you've got to think about the performance overhead of how security can affect all of those VMs on a host which is almost running at full capacity already. The next major consideration is that these virtualized resources are dynamic. They're constantly changing, especially if you're a service provider or a hoster where you might even have the public actually creating and provisioning virtual machines, deploying new storage, deploying new network. So you've got to try to ensure that all of this protection for these new resources is immediate and automatic so that you're not missing anything with a fresh deployment. Next thing that you need to consider is your role as the administrator and how much control you have over those virtualized resources. In many cases, the administrators don't even have access to the virtual machines themselves, especially in hosted or service provider environments. So think about that. How can you actually protect and secure a virtual machine if you can't log into it and install the software and configure settings or apply group policies. So you've got to think about how you can actually go and protect that resource if you don't have access to it. And then the other final consideration here is the importance of security and compliance for a business. Now briefly, let's talk about an architecture that you could use to actually enforce protection following these best practices. Now in this example, I'm going to be using our technology, Five9 Cloud Security, but if there are other virtualization security solutions out there, they could also follow this model, although we are the only ones that do this for Hyper-V. Now the way that we actually protect about security is we have a centralized management server. This basically is our engine. It's the brains of the operation. You can access that through several different interfaces. A traditional console that you see on the right here, PowerShell, and then we also have some other types of interfaces that hook into other Microsoft solutions, including Azure Pack, as well as System Center Virtual Machine Manager. And we'll actually show you those towards the end of this session as well. We store all of our information on a database. We could use SQL or we can use other databases. Since we're trying to stay part of the Microsoft family, we do recommend SQL Server because you could take advantage of its high availability features as well. But in any case, you can use any database here that's going to store and maintain the data. Now, when we actually want to protect a host, we can think about protecting every VM, but again, that's not that practical in a virtualized environment, or we can protect at the host level. And that's actually the way Five9 Cloud Security works. We don't have to install agents in every VM. We actually install agents on the host themselves. And by doing that, it automatically protects every VM running on that host. So this allows us to get past these challenges of making sure that we can scale and being responsive to these dynamic environments where suddenly new VMs or disks or networks appear on a host. Since we are protecting at the host level, we're automatically going to protect all of those VMs running on it too. Let's talk about our best practices for all firewalls inside a virtualized environment. Now, the first thing to consider is whether you have a heterogeneous environment. Now, if you're running Linux virtual machines, you may need to think about a vendor-agnostic firewall solution because traditional Windows firewall isn't going to work. Now, what we're able to do is if you're really trying to protect against any virtual machine, any guest operating system, and you want to do that with a single solution, again, you're going to have to do that protection at the host level. And so as different traffic comes in, regardless of whether it's traffic for a Linux virtual machine or a Hyper-V virtual machine, we can use the same tool to accept that or to block that traffic. The other best practice, though, we want to encourage people to think about is be extremely cautious if you're using a physical firewall. Now, this is what people used in traditional data centers. The firewall itself was an appliance, a physical piece of hardware that you would connect everything through. Now, in general, these physical appliances still work. They're a great way to go and look at traffic that's going from one host to a different host. But the challenge that you have in a virtualized environment is traffic that never leaves a host, traffic that runs only on a private network. And a private network basically means that one VM can speak to another VM on the host without having to go external. This means that if one of your virtual machines gets infected, it could go and infect every other virtual machine on that same host through private networks because you probably don't have a firewall there. So keep that in mind. Now, there are some alternatives. If you are still using a physical firewall, you can use VLAN technology and create some, complicated, some advanced routing. And what that can actually do is it can take the traffic from the VM on the host, it will take it outside of that host, send it through the firewall, come back into the host, and then send it to that second virtual machine on the same host. So there are solutions to still integrate with a physical firewall, but you're going to lose a lot of performance and efficiency because instead of just doing a fast connection between the two VMs, you're literally routing it out of that host, sending it through several layers of network protocols, and then bringing it back into the same host. So it could become highly inefficient as well as complex to manage. So be careful when you're planning your firewall design here. So what are the best practices that we recommend? Well, first thing, you want to use a central point of management when you're protecting your entire data center with firewalls. And the reason for that is to use things like templates and group policies so that you can guarantee consistency. What we recommend is designing templates for different roles, and then applying those templates across the VMs that use that role. So for example, I'm going to create a firewall template for my web servers. I'm going to create a firewall template for my application servers and a different one for my database servers, and configure different rules and settings for those. Once I get a new virtual machine that meets one of those profiles, I could go and apply those settings so that it becomes protected and I get that same guaranteed level of consistency. We recommend using a database that has reporting capabilities, things such as SQL Server. This way you're able to go and collect information and compare that to historical information. Now, for those people out there that aren't security experts, maybe they're just virtualization experts, looking at historical and trending data is a very important security analytic tool. The way a lot of security technologies work is they'll look at normal traffic patterns over the course of a couple days or weeks or months and establish a baseline. If they notice that for some reason a particular server or network or host is deviating from that baseline significantly, that can actually help identify a threat, something that's not expected. So by being able to collect and track this historical data, you're going to be much more easily able to identify these anomalies that are happening in your environment by comparing it to historical information. You also want to make sure that you're protecting those private virtual networks as well. You know, this is going back to that same conversation around when you have a physical network and not wanting to route traffic out there. So make sure you're protecting those private virtual networks as well to prevent threats from spreading within a single host. And so the best way to do this is by protecting actually at the host level. Because by protecting here, not only are you going to be able to support every Hyper-V guest operating system, Linux, Windows, Windows client, but we can also protect every VM that gets deployed on it, even if they're dynamic. This protection is automatic and it's immediate. Now the way we do this is using the Hyper-V technology known as the Hyper-V Extensible switch. So let's quickly walk through what exactly the Hyper-V Extensible switch is and how it functions within the role of preparing and leveraging a firewall. Now what I have here in this diagram is I have our Hyper-V host, the physical server, and I have a couple of virtual machines that are going to be running on it. Both my physical server has a physical NIC, and my virtual machines, they have virtual NICs. But using the NICs, this is where we're going to be sending all of our traffic and all of our data. This includes our network traffic, user traffic, and storage traffic. All of this has to get routed through this single channel to actually get from the outside world to my virtual machine. And everything that it goes through is this single component, the Hyper-V virtual switch. Now this virtual switch is basically our routing mechanism which sits on the Hyper-V host. Now what Five9 does, the way that we offer security and protection is we actually have our own filter driver which sits within this switch. So what this means is we can actually inspect every single traffic, every single piece of network traffic and choose to accept it or choose to decline it based on your firewall settings. Now if you think about, again, this role of the switch, this is like the single point of convergence of all network traffic. So regardless of what type of virtual network I'm using, it's going to go through that same switch, that same firewall, so that we can guarantee that we're going to block all of these different types of traffic threats and patterns. So external networks goes through the switch, gets accepted or blocked by the firewall. Internal only traffic from a host to a VM, it also goes through that same switch and can be blocked or accepted. But here's the tough one, this private traffic. This is where those physical firewalls fail. With our private traffic, it's only going within the host. But if you're actually protecting at the switch level, you are also protecting all of the private traffic as well. So this means that even if one of your virtual machines becomes infected, you're still going to be able to protect all of those other virtual machines on that same host. And you're only going to be able to do this with a solution that goes and actually protects at that Hyper-V virtual switch level. I'm now going to turn it over to Alex, and he's going to go and take us through our first demo here, taking a look at how Five9 Cloud Security designs and uses the virtual firewall.
So, as Simon mentioned, Five9 Cloud Security controls your traffic on a virtual switch level. That allows to control external, internal, and private networks. Therefore, we can completely isolate your virtual machines sitting on the same host, same LAN, even same VLAN. The approach that we use by default is called deny all approach. So whenever virtual firewall is enabled on a virtual machine, all communications get blocked. So obviously, whenever firewall is enabled, you need to have some whitelist rules to allow traffic flow back and forth from a virtual machine. I'm going to demonstrate this on two virtual machines, virtual machine T1 and virtual machine T2. Virtual machine T1 currently have firewall enabled, and you can see that, and it has multiple rules pre-created here, including ISMP allow rule. Virtual machine T2 doesn't have firewall enabled at this moment. It has a few rules in here, but it doesn't have any ISMP rule configured. I just want to stress that here. So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to launch pin requests from virtual machine T1 to virtual machine T2. Obviously, they go through because there is no firewall enabled on virtual machine T2, even though there is no allow rule. So I'm going to enable virtual firewall protection for this virtual machine and switch back to the console. As you can see, requests time out immediately because there is no ISMP rule pre-configured for this virtual machine. To allow this traffic, I'm going to go and create an IP rule on ISMP protocol. Also, within Finding Cloud Security, we are using a very specific Hyper-V approach that allows you to create firewall rules fast and also in a very secure model. This is called remote virtual machines configuration. Whenever you create a firewall rule, you can actually select precisely what virtual machines are going to be affected, and even if someone changes the IP address or manages to change MAC address inside the virtual machine, this rule keeps working. So we are kind of killing two birds with one stone here. This configuration is much quicker than configuring that via IP addresses or MAC addresses, and also is more secure because even if someone changes IP address inside a virtual machine, rule keeps working. So what I'm going to do now, so I'm going to create this ISMP rule for V1, I just call it. I hit OK, and now you can see that VM2 just got ISMP allow rule. When we go back to the console, we can see that pin requests are now back on because there is allow rule in here. As easy as it is, and configuration process just takes a few seconds and allows you to use virtual machines as units for firewall rules configuration.
Well, next topic that we're going to talk about are best practices around antivirus and anti-malware. Now let's talk about a couple considerations here with some of the realities of a virtualized environment. So as we talked about before, it may be likely that the administrator doesn't actually have access to the guest operating system. And what this means is that if you're trying to do endpoint security and actually provide security within that VM, you need to worry about your tenants. You need to worry about whether they're competent enough to manage their own security, but you also need to worry about whether they could do anything bad, whether they could disable their security settings or try to create a threat or launch a virus, whether that's purposely or accidentally. You know, a lot of the times tenants might download things from the internet. They might have a virus that goes and actually starts attacking other people from their virtual machine or their host without them ever knowing it. So you need to really try to think about, how can I secure my environment if I have tenants that are either uneducated on how to manage their security or they're purposely doing something bad. The other big consideration around antivirus and anti-malware is actually doing scams. Now, what we're trying to do, well, the optimal solution here is to obviously try to prevent threats from ever actually attaching themselves to your environment, blocking them as they're coming in through the network. But the reality is, sometimes even if you're trying to block them, you could still get a virus in your data center for a couple of reasons. It could be possible that you actually downloaded that virus a month ago, but it was never identified until just now. It was one of those viruses that had a time bomb or a logic bomb where it just sat dormant and then suddenly kicked in based on a certain event. So you may already have a fully infected data center. Another way that this can happen is if you have an attack from someone on the inside. someone that may actually plug a physical thumb drive or hard drive into one of your servers and launch something from there. So even if you are still protecting the network level, you still need to do scanning on the disks to try to go and actually identify these new threats and these new viruses. Now, when you do a scan, what happens with a traditional scan is it actually looks at every block on the file system, and it tries to match that to various virus signatures based on what's known as a hash. And in computing term, hash is basically an algorithm that makes it very easy to identify a complex set of information or a complex file and match it to a different one. So anyway, using these signatures, using these hashing technologies, what's basically happening is that every disk of every VM has to be opened, inspected, and scanned. Now, consider that if you've moved to a virtualized environment, you're probably running a lot of these hosts at near full capacity, trying to take advantage of the density. Now, if you're trying to kick off a process on all of these VMs on a host which is running close to full capacity already, and you're doing this massive performance overhead, that could cause a lot of issues to the virtualized environment. Things like memory paging, which slows down performance. Another thing that could happen is if you have monitoring solutions to look at the performance, things that will do load balancing, maybe Virtual Machine Manager, maybe some other technologies from System Center or Five9, you need to consider that you might get a live migration storm as well. If all of a sudden all of your hosts start to use up all of their capacity, that starts to trigger live migrations that can not only impact your disk and your actual your storage networks, it can significantly impact your traditional networks as well. So consider the impact of scanning. And you always want to think about how can I do my scanning in an intelligent way to minimize this big performance overhead. The other big challenge that is specific to Hyper-V is that if you're not actually using a solution designed for Hyper-V, there's a chance that you'll corrupt your disks. And so traditional antivirus and anti-scanning tools are not recommended by Microsoft unless they are fully tested and certified for Hyper-V. So let's say, for example, you're a VMware user. You've recently migrated over to Hyper-V. You want to continue to use your existing security technology. That may work, but you really need to be sure that it has been tested, or otherwise you're going to go and corrupt all of your virtual machines. Now, Microsoft, they give a recommendation or a workaround for this. The workaround is to exclude every single virtual machine from scanning. So kind of think about the logic there, right? You have antivirus to go and protect everything, but Microsoft's recommendation is to skip scanning it so it doesn't cause corruption. So you really need to consider to actually have a security solution designed, tested, and optimized for Hyper-V to avoid this major issue. And for more information, please check out this KB article, 961804. So what are the best practices of how to protect against this? Well, we're going to go back to this key one here of protecting at the host level. By protecting at the host level, we're going to be able to support every guest operating system. So what that means is if you have a Linux virtual machine, or if you have a Windows server or a Windows virtual machine, we can actually detect viruses across all of them from the same location. Because again, we're detecting all of these issues at the host level. We're trying to protect things. And when we do a scan, we can go and match to different types of signatures, not just our Windows signatures, but also these Linux signatures. Also consider protecting at the host level because you may not actually have access to the guest operating system. You may have one of these malicious tenants. But by actually doing this protection and this antivirus and anti-malware at the host level, it doesn't matter what those tenants are doing, what those end users are doing, because we're protecting their networks. So even if you have a tenant on a virtual machine that's trying to go and initiate an attack, we are actually monitoring all of that network traffic leaving that virtual machine so we can hopefully detect it and prevent it very early on before it becomes a major threat. You also want to make sure you have a solution designed for Hyper-V to not only avoid the VM corruption, but also protect those private networks. We also recommend using industry standard signatures. There are some antivirus companies out there or security companies out there that try to create their own signatures, and honestly, they can be very ineffective. So Five9, rather than trying to reinvent this ourselves and try to become a actual threat identification company, we just leverage industry standard signatures. So we have partnerships with Kaspersky, with ThreatTrack Viper, and we're actually in conversation with several others to go and provide these third-party industry standard signatures for all of our customers. And then finally, what are the best practices around scanning? Well, big thing, you got to be smart about this. Don't scan every VM. Don't overwhelm those hosts. And so you can take advantage of technologies such as change block tracking or staggered scans to help enable that. And we'll talk about what those are in a second. So let's go back to our architecture here and consider different ways that we can go and protect the disk and optimize our antivirus. So here we have my Hyper-V host once again. And remember, Hyper-V can store its virtual machines on all different types of storage arrays. It could do it on direct attached storage, which means that essentially the virtual machine traffic goes from the VM through the network, through the VM bus, to the physical disk attached to the host. We have virtual hard disks that can be stored on a traditional SAN or a cluster shared volume disk. So this way, all the traffic will go off the host and it will get routed either through an Ethernet connection, if it's using something like iSCSI, or an HBA, a storage network connection, if it's using something like Fibre Channel. And then we have Hyper-V virtual machines which can run on SMB file shares. So essentially, you now have a virtual machine that's sending all of its data and information over a network using the SMB protocol. So keep in mind, you can run your VMs in lots of different locations using lots of different protocols. So you need to make sure that you have a solution that can protect against them and scan all of these different options. Now, the way we've implemented our protection through Five9 security to help enable all of these best practices is by, of course, doing some active monitoring here. So what we're able to do is take a look at certain traffic patterns, things like HTTP, and if we notice that there's a threat coming through this pipeline, we can immediately block it before it even gets to the virtual machine and goes onto a disk. Now let's say we already have our disks infected and we need to go do one of these scans. Well, our best practice here to speed up scans is we leverage a technology known as change block tracking, or CBT. And what actually happens here is, rather than scan an entire disk, let's say I have a terabyte disk, instead of having to scan that entire 1 terabyte each time, we actually just keep track of the blocks of data which have been changed since our last scan, and then we only scan those. So instead of scanning a 1 terabyte disk, I may only need to scan 10 megabytes, or 100 megabytes, or half a terabyte. But by basically tracking how all of these blocks in the disks are changed, we can significantly speed up the scanning time here. In some cases, 70 times faster than other competitive solutions that don't leverage this technology. Now, in many cases, we still recommend doing these full system scans, right? Maybe an infection happened from the inside. Maybe we have a newly identified virus. So our best practice for these new scans is giving you the ability to schedule your jobs so that you can stagger them, meaning that when you're doing this complete scan, the whole terabyte, you're not doing it on the same virtual machine every time at the same time. This way, you're not going to overwhelm those hosts. You're not going to trigger those scanning storms. You're not going to trigger live migration storms. So we have a lot of intelligence built into how we go and scan and protect you at the storage level as well. All right, I'm going to switch it back over to Alex, and he's going to walk you through some of our antivirus and anti-malware options using Five9 Cloud Security.
As you mentioned, we use change block tracking technology for agentless full system antivirus scans of virtual machines. This is possible because of our direct access to VHD and VHDX files, and this is something that allows to greatly reduce time required for full system antivirus scans of virtual machines. These scans work even if virtual machine is in off state or if it has any antivirus in there that is being corrupted or that's not working. So all of these scenarios are supported, and of course they're all equally important. And right here on this tab, on Antivirus tab, you can see the results of full system scans that happened to virtual machine T1. I just had a few of them in here, and you can see the time that was required for each of this. The very last one was about scanning 1034 objects, and it took 32 seconds. I want to stress that as we are doing the change block tracking monitoring, this is a full system antivirus scan of your entire virtual machine. This is the first antivirus step within finding cloud security. It also includes two other options that are called Active Protection and Network Traffic Scanner. Active Protection allows you to push a tiny lightweight service inside a virtual machine to do real-time tasks only. This is super lightweight and allows you to protect your system in real time from inside the system, from inside the operating system. Quarantine can show you all the threats that were detected by antivirus scheduled scan and by active protection. All of that is very well centralized, so you can see the status of your antivirus protection for your virtual machine from all the blocks. And the latest release of Finding Cloud Security actually got a great functionality that is called Network Traffic Scanner, and this functionality allows you to perform real-time agentless scans of HTTP traffic coming to and from virtual machine on a virtual switch level. This way you can actually detect malicious and suspicious files, viruses, malware flying to and from your virtual machine on a real-time basis. And as you know, HTTP protocol is usually responsible for absolute majority of infections coming to virtual machines. So Finding Cloud Security includes 3 ways of protecting you with antivirus, and all of them are included within the product, and they leverage the same antivirus engine, either ThreatTrack Viper or Kaspersky.
Well, next section we're going to move on to talk about is around intrusion detection. So first of all, what exactly is intrusion detection for those people that may not be in the security space? Intrusion detection basically allows us to correlate information across multiple virtual machines or hosts or servers and look for unusual patterns in the traffic activity. So some different types of intrusion detection threats that we protect against are things like cross-site scripting, brute force attacks, or denial of service attacks. And if you kind of think about what's really happening with a lot of those, you have a particular set of VMs or servers sending lots and lots of information very rapidly to a single endpoint. Maybe you have lots of virtual machines that are trying to bring down somebody's website. Well, you would notice an unusual traffic pattern there because you would see a lot of requests from multiple servers all going to a single endpoint. Now, the way intrusion detection works is it basically collects this data and information across multiple endpoints, correlates the information, and looks for these anomalies in the traffic patterns. So with intrusion detection, this is very critical to make sure that you're not being attacked, and also to make sure that your tenants aren't attacking other people, if maybe, for example, you're a public hoster. So the best practices that we have around intrusion detection is, first of all, be cautious if you use a hardware-based intrusion detection system. And this uses the same principles and the same warnings as using a hardware-based firewall. If you have some physical device that's sitting somewhere on the network, it may not capture all of the traffic. And more specifically, it probably won't capture that traffic that's happening within a host. So you could have a case where you have one infected virtual machine on your host, and that's going and attacking every other VM on the host, but your intrusion detection won't pick that up because it's external. You also want to think about how you can go and scale up, because intrusion detection really becomes better and more efficient with the more endpoints that it monitors. So for example, imagine that you have 1,000 virtual machines in your data center, but you've only configured intrusion detection on 10 of them. Well, you could already lose most of your data center before it even starts to pick that up. Now look at the other hand, the other side. If you have 1,000 VMs and you have intrusion detection analyzing the traffic across all 1,000, you're much more likely to quickly identify and resolve an issue here. So when you think about scaling, you really want to make sure that as your data center scales and new virtual machines get deployed and monitored, that they get hooked into your intrusion detection for faster reporting and a faster response. So our best practices are to use a solution that's designed for Hyper-V, actually protect at the host level, using all of those same benefits that we've discussed earlier with our firewalls and with our antivirus. making sure that we can protect our private networks, we can support every guest operating system, and we can immediately protect any VM that gets deployed on that host. We also recommend a centralized point of management so that you can get consistent reporting. One challenge that you can have in an intrusion detection system is if you don't have synchronization between your management system, it can actually cause a lot of confusion and send you chasing down threats that don't really exist. If you have, let's say, your computer clocks out of sync on these management systems, once that data gets correlated from multiple servers and multiple management systems, if there's inconsistencies there, it might look like you're being attacked 3 times or 5 times or 10 times more than the reality, simply because those actual reporting data and tracking information isn't consistent. So you want to make sure that you have a single, consistent, unified reporting and tracking system as well. You need to make sure that you don't just protect against being attacked, but also make sure that your tenants or users are not attacking other people. So protect both inbound and outbound. And as another best practice, use those industry standard signatures once again. 5.9, we leverage Cisco Snort. The reason for this is we don't want to try to write our own intrusion detection algorithms. We want to go and leverage what the rest of the world is using, what the most common ones are, what's going to be best protected. So definitely make sure that you're using an IDS that does use industry standards. Let's take a quick look architecturally how IDS fits in and how 5.9 Cloud Security can protect against these types of threats. Now here in our architecture, we have our management system, we have our host, we have our database, and then we have the public internet. Now again, 5.9 Cloud Security is running on the host, so we're doing intrusion detection at that virtual level, looking at the traffic coming in and out our virtual machines and our hosts. Now, we want to make sure that we can actually hook into various systems to go and create alerts or actually analyze this information that we're logging. So we can use on-premise systems. We actually write all of our events into the syslog format, which is an industry standard. And then using syslog format, you could use a variety of different tools to actually go and do analysis. So even though we'll do some detection with Cisco, you can go hook this into things like Splunk, things like Azure Operational Insights, or other third-party log analytic tools to do even more insight, even more information to figure out what's happening in the data center. So let's say, for example, that we have a denial of service attack. This could go 2 ways. This could be my virtual machines attacking someone else, or this could be someone else attacking my infrastructure. But either way, what's going to happen is over time, we're going to notice these anomalies in the traffic pattern, that we're getting an unusual amount of requests from our host to this particular endpoint. We start to log this, and then we're going to notice that a problem's happened. We go and create alerts. So essentially, our whole design here is to inform you when these problems are happening, give you different opportunities, different integration points for the best way you want to go remedy this issue. I'm now going to turn it back over to Alex, and he's going to take us through our third demo, a quick overview of our intrusion detection system.
So intrusion detection system is based on Cisco Snort signatures, and this is the ones that actually allow us to analyze traffic on a virtual switch level. And by doing that, actually, we have very, very precise information about all malicious or suspicious network activities flying in there. The most secure part of that, even if someone is trying to spoof your traffic, this is not the way they can do that. Because on a virtual switch level, you get very accurate details on where your traffic is coming from and where it is going to. On this particular virtual machine, I just run one attack, just one suspicious network activity that got detected by our intrusion detection system. Whenever it gets into a log, you can view that on a virtual machine level, and you can immediately create a blocking rule out of that with just a couple of clicks. Also, 5.9 Cloud Security allows you to feed all these logs into syslog server, and integration just takes a few seconds, and also allows you to send email notifications about the events happening within 5.9 Cloud Security. These, of course, include antivirus events, IDS events, and network traffic scanner web anti-malware events.
Taking a look at management and best practices for Hyper-V security with management. Now, we talked about this a little earlier, but keep in mind that all these laws and regulations are changing. Now, with that as well, if you're a hoster or a service provider, you're running a large infrastructure, it's important for you to stay compliant, not only for your own benefit, but also so that you can continue to sell services and businesses to your customers. For example, if you're hosting certain medical records and there's a change around medical laws, you need to make sure that you stay compliant so that your customers can continue to offer services. So remember, there's a lot of complexity now happening in these virtualized environments. Another change that we're seeing in the industry as well is that more and more people are starting to leverage hosters as they're starting to see the benefits of the public cloud. Now, when we speak about public cloud, people just generally think that this means something like Microsoft Azure. But reality is, a public cloud could also be a hoster located within your own country that allows you to run infrastructure as a service or other services there. And so a lot of customers, they say, you know, there's no Azure data center, I can't use the cloud. But that's not quite true. What Microsoft has done is they've released a technology known as Azure Pack that allows hosters to run basically a lightweight version of Microsoft Azure inside their own data center. So let's say, for example, you're located in Germany. Germany has very strict rules around where the data for all of their government and other critical information is stored. It cannot leave the country. And Microsoft Azure does not have a data center in Germany. But we have many hosting partners. Microsoft has many hosting partners that have actually set up their own data centers with these lightweight versions of Azure running inside it, allowing anyone in Germany to take advantage of the power of Azure or use these hosters without ever having the data leave the country. So start to consider this with your deployment models, whether you're a hoster or can take advantage of a hoster. There's definitely a growing interest in this as well. Now, the other consideration when you start to think about managing at scale is that self-service users really need to have that instantaneous protection as well. Think about if you're a large hoster, you have thousands of tenants. There's probably several, if not dozens, of virtual machines that get deployed every day. We need to make sure that that protection gets guaranteed and is instantaneous. So our best practices are, again, protect at that host level. So we're instantly securing every virtual machine that gets deployed upon it. Make sure that you're using supported software. And as a reminder, Windows Server 2003 support ends in a couple of months. Now, this is really important around compliance because pretty much every compliance law in the world says that you have to be using supported software. And what supported software means is that the original manufacturer of that software, for example, Microsoft with Windows Server, they need to continue to offer security updates and patches. And this is no longer going to happen for Windows Server 2003. So again, make sure that you start to migrate, move to the latest versions of the operating system. Use industry standards for the various policies and log analytics. And use centralized management for a single location to collect and report all of the information that you need. Now, Five9 Cloud Security was designed with the enterprise in mind. We actually have customers of all sizes, from people with just one or two different Hyper-V hosts that they want to secure and protect, all the way up to some of the largest enterprises in the world. Now, the way that we can provide high scale is we already talked about our different management options. So you can use PowerShell if you need to do automation. You can use the Azure Pack extension if you want to offer security as a service through these Azure-like data centers. And if you're already an existing System Center customer, you can actually protect your environment using a single console. So this means you can log into SCVMM, and not only can you protect your storage, your network, and your virtual machines through SCVMM, but we have a plugin for Five9 Cloud Security that fits directly into the SCVMM management console. So you can manage all of your security settings from that same interface as well. But we wanted to provide redundancy for our management server too. That's critical, making sure that we continue to protect new hosts as they get added, or new virtual switches on hosts, or new virtual machines on those hosts. So making sure that we have a redundancy solution here is critical for high availability. Our SQL Server can also be clustered. So you can use SQL Always On, SQL High Availability. And we also support branch offices as well. So if you have multiple data centers, multiple locations, you can have a management server running in each of them, even if they're not always connected to each other. And when they do reconnect, they will resync. They will share the latest updates to templates or rules, things like that, so that we get consistency across the solution. I'm now going to switch it back over to Alex, He's going to give us a quick walkthrough of integration with SCVMM as well as Azure Pack, showing how we can take advantage of security as a service.
Finding cloud security can be integrated into System Center Virtual Machine Manager. Obviously, we have a few integration parts of that. We integrate into logical switches. That's called a compliance extension, and we also integrate directly into System Center Virtual Machine Manager interface to provide you convenience on managing your security settings directly from a centralized management console. Obviously, we just replicate all the security settings and configuration options that are available within the standalone console within the System Center Virtual Machine Manager interface. So you can manage host lists, virtual machine states, tenants, user, and antivirus settings, and so on and so forth. So all of the management capabilities available within the standalone console available through System Center Virtual Machine Manager interface. And as you can reduce the number of consoles that you need and you use in everyday life, Hyper-V management, obviously you save quite a bit of time on switching between the consoles. As of Azure Pack integration, we provide integration with Admin Portal and with Tenant Portal. So both of these portals are equally important within Azure Pack projects and allow you to actually provide security as a service with the help of Finding Cloud Security. At this stage, for the first release of Azure Pack Extension, we have virtual firewall and IDS functionality included. Therefore, you can create plans that include Finding Cloud Security and allow your tenants, customers, to subscribe to these plans. Once they're subscribed, they're able to adjust security settings of their virtual machines via Finding Cloud Security tab right away. Creating a firewall rule is very easy, so we are maintaining the same level of easy configuration that Azure Pack has for everything else, so we are using the same concept as built in within Azure Pack itself. So doing that becomes very easy, and if you provide services based on Azure Pack, that's certainly a must to provide your customers with security options, security services, and it definitely is going to stand out compared to other companies who are not providing that as an option.
Now, one thing to add as well, with being able to offer security as a service, we actually provide our SCVMM plugin and our Azure Pack plugins for free. Now, what this means is you can go and pass on security as a service to your tenants and actually monetize from that. So not only can this be a differentiated offering for your data center where you have security as a service that no one else does, but it's a cost that you can pass on to your end users as a value-added service. So for example, maybe you're traditionally charging $10 per virtual machine a month. If they now have security enabled, you can charge $15 per virtual machine a month. And you can take advantage of creating templates for all of your users to make it easy for them to go and configure their own security settings. So this could be a good opportunity to help grow your business, offer unique value, and also monetize on the solution as well. Now, as we summarize here, hopefully you have learned that virtualized infrastructure does have different security considerations from your traditional infrastructure, where you will do endpoint protection. You've really got to make sure that your data center considers the firewall, AV, anti-malware, and intrusion detection. And by protecting at the host level using a solution such as Five9, we can guarantee that. In fact, Five9 Cloud Security is the only agentless solution for Hyper-V. No one else that does security for Hyper-V offers an agentless solution. They still go back to that traditional endpoint management. Now, there are other people that do this for VMware, for vCenter, and vShield, but again, we're the only ones that do this for Hyper-V. So if you genuinely believe that you can take advantage of this agentless approach to security, I strongly encourage you to go check out our solution and see how we can go and provide you with security. Now, if you are interested, you could go to our website or email sales@five9.com. Feel free to also reach out to Alex or myself directly. The way we handle licensing is the same model as Microsoft, where we're licensing per 2 CPUs. So we hope that this can bring some level of consistency with people that are already using Windows Server. If you need 10 Windows Server licenses for your Hyper-V host, you would also need 10 Five9 Cloud Security licenses. So trying to make that a relatively easy model. We, of course, give discounts based on volume. We have discounts for service providers that can pay per virtual machine, and we do have flexibility in the pricing based on VM density. So hopefully, after this webcast, you are encouraged to at least evaluate the solution, as we do also have free trials. There was a question here, what was that KB number? This is KB number 961804. So KB 961804. Okay, next question that we have here. Do I still need to install antivirus on the host? Do I need to exclude scanning of VHX files? I think that's VHDX files. So what's going to happen is you go and install the 5.9 security on every host. Now, basically what's happening here is in the 5.9 Security Manager console, you specify which host that you want to protect. Once you specify which host you protect, we will then go ahead and install the agent. Now, what's nice about that mechanism is if your hosts are dynamic and you're suddenly adding new virtual networks to those hosts, we're going to automatically protect against those new virtual networks as well. So remember, we go and add our agent in the virtual switch level, but it doesn't matter how many virtual switches you have on a host or if they're dynamic, we're still going to protect against them. The second question around excluding VHDX files, nope, you don't need to exclude those. We make sure that you can scan all of your virtual machines, regardless of whether they're Generation 1, Generation 2, VHD, VHDX. And then, of course, all different types of virtual disks, dynamic, fixed, expanding, all of those different options. Next question we have here, do I need to install a separate antivirus solution? Microsoft doesn't recommend this. You can continue to use Hyper-V 5.9 Cloud Security to scan all of your hosts. Now, one thing to consider here is you're still going to need other types of security in your data center, right? You're still going to need security for people actually trying to connect to it, so things like remote desktop, edge protection, edge security. So our focus is really around that virtualized environment, protecting all of your virtualized resources running on the Hyper-V host. Our next question, will you add security? So will you add 5.9 Cloud Security to 5.9 Manager so you can do management all in one place? In fact, we actually offer a variation of 5.9 Manager today that does include our antivirus solution. So if you go and take a look at 5.9 Manager Plus, you'll actually get all of the antivirus components fully integrated in that. Now, it is only antivirus with that, so we do not include our full security suite, just the most common features. However, it is on our roadmap to essentially converge and integrate all of our management products sometime in the future. We don't have a date announced for that, but we certainly see and appreciate the benefits of having a unified management experience for all of your different Hyper-V infrastructure. So the question is, I work for a bank. Security is very important for the hosts as well as the VMs. Does the real-time AV agent give full compliance? So let's talk a little bit about how we fit in with compliance in real time. So remember, when you're looking at compliance, you need to follow a specified set of guidelines that are provided by a particular individual or organization. What we're able to do, if you use our technology, you're going to help enable compliance. You're going to get better levels of protection. But just by purchasing and deploying our product, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to meet a specific set of rules. Now, what happens during a compliance audit, let's say, for example, you want to go for something like PCI, the Credit Card Industry Protection Standard. What's going to happen is you as the administrator would go and protect your data center. You would include 5.9 Cloud Security. You would make sure you have things like backup, replication, Active Directory, secure sign-on, making sure that you hit all of those checkboxes, of which 5.9 Cloud Security could be one of them. And then you go and actually have that security audit by a third-party company. And they will go scan, analyze your data center, make sure you're compliant. So the key message here is we don't guarantee compliance, but we're one of the tools in the toolbox that definitely help enable that and help secure that. Excuse me. Second question we have, talking about our real-time protection. So what we do with real-time protection for antivirus is we can actually monitor HTTP traffic that comes into a particular host. And we can look at that as it comes in and choose whether to block something if we see a virus that's happening. Now, what we're really working on and what's very important on our roadmap is expanding support of that real-time protection to also include other different protocols, so beyond just HTTP. Now, you do have another option, though. If you also want to have guaranteed real-time protection on every virtual machine and covering every single protocol, you can actually go and install our agent inside that virtual machine. So this is kind of a trade-off, right? You lose the benefit of having this nice, host-based only approach. You have to go through that additional step of actually protecting at the endpoint. But if you are protecting at the endpoint, then you're going to guarantee that you get that real-time protection for all the different protocols. So kind of a trade-off there, real-time for HTTP and agentless, or get that full real-time protection. But again, it is on our roadmap to really try to merge these technologies and get real-time protection as much as possible here. The free antivirus version states that SQL Server must be installed. Can I use SQL Express? So let me clarify what we can use for our database here. You can use any version of SQL. So if you want to use the free version of SQL Express, absolutely. You can go as advanced to use the full versions of SQL with, Enterprise Data Center Edition using Always On. But we also do support other types of databases, so you're not restricted just to using SQL Server if you want to use something else. So we do try to remain flexible here. So the question is, do we have any type of reseller program to get some free in-house licenses for use for product training, etc.? Absolutely. If anybody out there is a partner, a trainer, a reseller, a vendor, anything like that that's really interested in investigating our solution more, we'd love to connect with you. So please feel free to send me an email, simon@five9.com, or send what would be easier, sales@five9.com. Please connect with us, and we'll be more than happy to help you out there. We definitely want to encourage people to use our product, promote it. So we're really trying to break down any barriers of adoption. So if you think you can help us out, we would absolutely love to chat with you. And we also included a link in that response. So if you go to five9.com and go to the partner registration page, you'll get additional guidance, additional information to take you there. Now, as we wrap this up, we definitely want to thank everybody for attending here. It was a great opportunity to speak to you, to give you some of these best practices around virtualization security, and to really help you kind of think about these different mechanisms that you may need to implement to protect your own data center. Goodbye.